I moved. That's right, I moved. Why did I move? 2 years. Has nothing to do with being reassigned or anything like that. For those of you that don't know, I am active duty Army, and I have been in the Army for 19 years. I just recently dropped my retirement packet, and I will officially be retired from the Army May 1st of next year. So the Cliff Notes version, we lived in a house, had a great shop, planned on being there for a while. I have another baby on the way, another boy, Max, who will be born in August, and the house we had just was too small. It was too small, small backyard, no storage, and a busy road right behind the house. Great school district, everything else is fantastic. We love the neighborhood. We just knew that we needed more space. So hence, here I am in a complete disaster, and I'm ready to build out an entire other shop. And the good news is I'm gonna take all of you guys along for the entire thing. So in this video, I'm gonna be showing you the layout of the shop, the proposed layout. I'm gonna show you all the junk and garbage everywhere, and I'm also gonna show you some of the considerations that I was making for this space, which I did design in SketchUp prior to moving in here to really help me get an idea of where I wanted things. And I'm just gonna kind of randomly talk about areas and sections and what I was thinking and why I placed something where I did. Again, excuse the mess, it is a disaster, but I think overall you guys should be able to get a pretty good idea of what I'm talking about. Enough talking, let's get into it. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start on the one exterior wall with the exception of the garage doors, which you should be able to see in the bottom left-hand portion of your screen. So this is my exterior wall. My electrical panel is on this wall. As you can see over here, I do have an exterior access door, which I actually had no plans in utilizing in the shop. I was gonna wall it off and everything. But we have our trash cans and everything out there. And so we decided, my wife and I decided that we'd really like to keep that the way it is. One of the reasons why I wanted to wall it off and kind of soundproof it is to block the noise going next door. It's really not a concern at this point. The house is, there's plenty of separation there, and I'm just really not concerned about the noise, and we just don't want to lose that, because once I put the heating and cooling, which is going to go right up here in this corner, once I put that in, instead of me opening the garage door to take stuff out, you know, trash, for instance, why not just open a much smaller door and then close it and then open and close it? I'm not losing as much air. So it just kind of made sense. So we're going to keep that. On this wall, a very similar setup to what I did in the last shop, which we got the dust collector down here up against the garage door, which I'll talk about here in just a moment. And then my miter saw station is going to be on this wall. And I haven't decided yet whether or not I'm going to be putting the tool wall up here, or if I'm actually going to be putting it over here on this other wall. So let's kind of shift a little bit and I'll show you that other wall. All right, so now we're actually looking at one of the interior walls. So that's probably one of the biggest changes between this shop and the last shop. Previous shop, I had one wall touching the home, nothing above. In this shop, this is an interior wall. Right on the back side of this wall is the laundry room, and on the back side of that is our gym. The wall that I'm about to show you in a moment, which is to the right side of this door, it actually touches like the pantry, leads into the kitchen. This door right here leads basically right into the kitchen, and that door actually is a major culprit of some sound transmission. And then the master bedroom in this house is actually directly above the garage, which is obviously a slight concern. I'll talk more about the noise stuff when it gets to that video where I'm talking about how I decided to deaden some of the noise and improve the quality a little bit. And then I have another wall that touches the dining room area, which then you go into the living room and all of that. So specifically to this section right here, what I'm thinking about doing is, before I had all of my tools and clamps and stuff like that on the single car garage door that I walled in, and I had all of that stuff on there to just maximize that space. What I think I'm gonna do here, I'm thinking about getting one of the Husky tool chests, and I'm actually gonna be placing that here, because one thing that I'm not keeping in this shop that I kept in the last shop was those big Husky cabinets. Those are actually down in the basement now, and I'll talk about that in a completely separate video. But I'm thinking about doing one of those right here, and I did decide to keep the black upper metal cabinets here, and that's where I'm gonna store things like glue, mineral spirits, stuff like that, finishes. Over here is where I'm actually thinking about creating that tool wall, because again, it's right next to the assembly table. So one of the big things, I know it's just covered in stuff right now, but the assembly table and miter saw station, that combo, the way I had it before, exactly the same. I'm basically taking my old shop and flip-flopping it, and then there are a few other changes which we'll talk about here in just a moment. All right, so now we're over on the other side of that door, and so this is my long wall that kind of matches the garage doors. So we've got the door there. Right on the back side of this wall, like I said before, is the pantry, and then through that is the kitchen. And over here on this wall, what I'm going to be doing is, as you can see right now, I've got my router table right here. That's probably not going to stay there. I'll talk more about that later, but the drill press. So I decided to put the drill press here, and then my CNC machine. This is probably the biggest change in this shop, is that my CNC machine is actually going to be over here in the corner. And I'll end this, shop layout area focusing on the tool cluster, the tool island, because what I was just talking about is going to kind of come into play there. But that's kind of what I'm going to do with this back wall. Extra lumber storage, sheet goods, stuff for the CNC machine, all of that. It's just going to kind of live on this wall, and that's pretty much all I'm going to have over here. I'm actually trying to avoid putting a lot of stuff on the walls. I might put a cabinet here for the drill press, possibly. I'm likely not keeping this stand. I might just build a base for it that has drawers or something like that. One of the considerations with this space was maximizing the exterior portion, right? So the exterior portion of the shop. And I've got a really big thing that's gonna change the layout of this shop dramatically. But let's go over here to the wall that I'm actually going to be storing all of my lumber. Now, I know I have it like zoomed out. I really just want to give you the biggest view of the space as possible. And so this is the wall that on the back side of this is our dining room. Now, one of the biggest benefits I found in this shop by putting the black Husky cabinets in the basement is that I'm basically giving myself a whole wall. I lost that wall. Now, I did have a lot of storage and there were a lot of things in there. However, everything that was in that had nothing to do with the shop. I would say 98% of the stuff that was in that had nothing to do with the shop. So by moving that into the basement, it gave me a whole nother section to use for lumber storage. And the big benefit to that, I don't know if you can see it in this frame, but right here is my single car door, which is the functional door in this shop. And the whole purpose for me wanting to put the lumber here is because if I'm going to get materials and pick up supplies, I'm going to back up and I'm going to download. Well, I want to download it as close as possible without me having to carry it around a bunch of other tools, which I had to do in the other shop. So for me, this was a huge, huge improvement. And another thing that I want to point out is that I decided to go primarily with vertical lumber storage as opposed to the racks that you see here. The racks are only there mainly because I had them from the previous shop. And two, the ceilings in this shop are a little bit taller. I want to say they're just over 10 feet or right around 10 feet. And so I wanted to be able to put all the boards that are too long to stand vertically up there. Obviously, I didn't want to have to cut those boards down just to stand them vertically. That doesn't make any sense. So I did go ahead and put some lumber racks up, and then I put myself another set right here with the pieces much closer together to handle smaller offcuts, things that won't fit in, say, a drawer. So when I was thinking about the layout of this shop, I started from the time that I back materials into the garage, which has always been my preferred choice. It's just the last shop didn't really allow for that because of the things that I accumulated and that I put in that shop. So I did with this layout, just like I did before, I used SketchUp to design a couple of different layouts until I was very happy with one. And once I was happy with one, I kind of went from there and really started to fine-tune things as time went on. And one of those big things that I wanted to make sure I captured in SketchUp was the lumber storage and the access to the garage door, which I would be bringing things in. Okay, so now we're on the other exterior wall, obviously being the one with the garage doors. The door that you see right here, I just mentioned that the single car garage door is going to be my functional door. I've already put a side mount motor on this. I had the same exact thing done as the previous shop. I liked it so much I wanted to make sure that I kept that in this shop. In this space, I'm going to be walling in the double door. So what that's going to allow for me is an entire full 16+ foot wall. So now with my assembly table on both sides and behind it where the miter saw station is, I'm completely walled in. I have tons of area for storage, but there's a kicker. On this wall, I'm gonna build this wall out. I'm gonna do a couple of different things. One, I'm gonna take some steps to help lessen the noise transfer. I already mentioned I put the insulation on this. Even though I'm going to be walling this in, I put the insulation in the garage door for a couple of different reasons. One, that's going to help deaden the noise. Two, it's going to help with the heating and cooling. So the other benefit is when I had them install the side mount on the single door, we went ahead and removed everything from the double door and we pinned this tight against the wall and then braced everything off. There is no air leaks around this thing, no light, nothing. On this one I do. I need to get that taken care of. I'm going to get some of those springs, but this is solid. But I really want to stop the noise transmission from going out. So this is going to help with that. When I wall it in, I'm going to be using some of the Rockwool Safe and Sound in the studs. So now I have double insulation, but I'm not doing the Safe and Sound for insulation purposes. I'm going to be doing that for sound deadening purposes because sound travels right out these garage doors worse than anything else in the shop. And so by adding mass and having those separate layers with some air gaps, and then I'm going to face everything likely with MDF to increase that mass, it's really going to do a good job of cutting down. Because I'm using MDF, granted it's going to have studs behind it, I will likely not hang a lot of stuff on here. I'm going to be running my ductwork up, and I'm going to have a few things on this wall. One of those things that I'm going to have on this wall, specifically right here in this area, is this time I actually really want to get a large dry erase board so I can use that in instructional videos instead of writing on paper. I really think that something at eye level for me is going to be beneficial for future videos where I'm explaining a certain technique or something needs to be drawn out. So that's kind of what this area right here is going to be used for. But other than that, completely walled off the double door, will be completely walling off the double door, single door, fully operational, only use when needed. Hands down, one of the biggest struggles, I would say, to this shop is what you see here. And that is this metal support beam pole that basically holds my master bedroom up. Now, when we were originally looking for houses, when I lived in the last house, one of the big things that was kind of a discriminator for me was actually garages that had this. This time it was a little bit different, and here's why. So you'll notice that I have a very similar layout, if you can see it under all the junk, but joiner planer combo here, parallel with the assembly table, like in the last shop. That was a big change that I made. Table saw, kind of like forming a T almost, and then the bandsaw. So these three tools are this cluster. I really liked that, and so there was really no reason to change it. Now, the reason why that ended up working to my advantage in this space is because this pole basically forces me to have one layout and keep it that way. And what I mean by that, it's not saying that there's a law that I can't change the layout of my shop. It's that I have dust collection, and it's that I have duct work that is going to have a drop. So if I can utilize this to my advantage and also use that as my duct drop, then I'm basically lucking out and I'm not losing two vertical areas. And what I mean by that is that if I didn't drop the dust collection here and I dropped it over there, not only am I losing that space, but I'm also losing this space. So now I have things hanging down in two separate spots, and that would just be a pain. If I can use it to my advantage, I'm already going to lose this area because of ductwork. Why not use this not only as a support for the ductwork, but also combine the two and then make this really not even an issue. And so with that being said, the original plan that I had was the bandsaw was going to be this direction. However, it gives me very little space to the right-hand side because I would be pushing through from this direction. So my buddy Ed and Sedge, they were over here and we were messing around, we were moving stuff around. They're like, well, why don't you put it here? And so what that did for me is by placing it over here on this side, it gives me all of this space here because the table on this is higher than that and that. Table saw is not in the way, and I still have space to move around should I need to get on the far side. The other benefit is on the table saw with the location that I have it here. Since the table saw has the fold down outfeed table, whenever I'm using the bandsaw, I can simply lower the outfeed table if I need the space behind, which probably won't happen very often, to be honest. Now, with the bandsaw in its location, I've got the table saw. Table saw is basically centered on the room, and my big consideration with this is I wanted it to be the outfeed portion of it facing against the garage door, which I could open if I need to, but since the shop is 20 feet deep, that's actually something I never said. The size of the shop is exactly the same size as my previous shop. It is 20 feet in depth, 30 feet in width. If anything, it's probably like 2 inches longer both directions, and maybe an additional 6 to 8 inches in ceiling height. But by placing this in the center, it essentially gives me 10 feet roughly of in-feed and out-feed support. Now, I mentioned before I put the drill press here, and I wanted to come back to that, and the CNC machine. Where I have my blade is basically centered, and anything that I'm cutting, this is actually lower than the in-feed table. So I still have the full depth that I talked about before. The only time where I see this ever being an issue, granted, I can just move this out of the way, right? I put casters on it, I just move it out of the way when needed. I just don't think it's gonna be a problem based on the things I build and the way I work. The CNC machine could be the one thing that does present a slight problem, and that's only if I'm taking a 4-foot by 8-foot sheet and I'm trying to cut on my table saw, which I can tell you I never do. I will always break it down with the track saw into more manageable pieces. So I would have to basically be cutting something that would be like 32 inches to the left of the blade for this to ever be a problem. So I kind of toyed with where I wanted to have this. Theoretically, this is kind of the only place I could put it based on this design. Time will tell, but honestly, I just don't think that's ever going to be an issue. And then moving on to the joiner planer combo, one thing that I did do slightly different here is I did cant it just a little bit. That's really to maximize the in-feed and out-feed space. And that's primarily because I have the router table here currently. If I move the router table, I'll probably just put this back straight again. But one thing is I do have the Incra fence coming. I ordered it like 3 months ago, so in like 6 or 7 months it'll finally be here. I wanted to make sure that I had enough space to utilize that fence system, and by turning this back straight, all the space that I need, which is great. But this was a really, really big factor for me in the shop. I was so pleased with this layout the way that it was. That's why the fact that that pole is located there really didn't matter to me so much in this space, because I knew I was going to put my tools back this way. Now I'm taking advantage of that pole and using it not only for support, but also as my dust collection drops. So works out really good. But overall, I'm going to save what I'm going to do for the ductwork in another video where I probably just talk about the dust collection specifically. But that is really the layout of this shop, or what it will be. Obviously, again, it is a complete disaster right now, but that's kind of where my head was at when I was thinking about this. I've got a ton of work to do, but that's kind of what I'm planning on going with. I'm excited to go through this process again. The move has nothing to do with the military making me move. It's just I wanted to be better prepared and better set up for retirement. So I've got a lot of videos that are going to be going over various things of this shop build out, and I'll probably culminate it in a shop tour where everything is beautiful, and I can talk about why I have everything where I do, kind of like I did in this, but it'll make more sense with a lot less things hanging around. If you guys have any questions about the new space, or maybe something I didn't cover or clarification, leave it down in the comments section below, or go over to Instagram, find me there at Bent's Woodworking, and send me a DM, and I will answer you as soon as I can. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, get out in the shop, try something new. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.